Picture Book Summit. Picture Book Summit.
Hey everybody, it's Kelly Panique with Picture Book Summit, and today we have a roundtable with our Picture Book Summit team, and we are talking about, I would say, an oft discussed topic amongst picture book writers and probably other writers as well, and that would be celebrity picture books in our case. Emma, why don't you start us off on this topic? I feel like you have some insider knowledge you could share with us.
I might have a thing or two to say on this subject. Thanks, Kelly. Well, and for any listeners who don't know or might not be aware, my writing partner is my mother, and my mother happens to be the actress Julie Andrews. And so I have a little bit of experience with celebrity picture book and other publishing forms of publishing. I want to start by saying that my mother published her first four books solo, all four of which were children's books. Her first two were middle grade novels, and then her second two were chapter books. She wrote her first picture book in collaboration with me, and all of her picture books since have been in collaboration with me. So, as you might imagine, this is a subject that is somewhat close to my heart. And the reason we're discussing it today is because there have been yet another recent spate of articles, two articles, in fact, recently in The Guardian, just this fall, back to back, talking about how galling it is when celebrities write picture books, and particularly, of course, when they write them poorly. And I think that the objection that most people cite is they get to cut the line, basically. They get to bypass the process of maybe A, learning how to write, and B, querying and so forth. They get to jump to the front of the line and to be required for publication. And then perhaps also they get the added boost of publicity that comes with celebrity. And I'm going to be speaking from a particular bias here. So we'll keep that in mind, but my co-founders, my colleagues have their opinions about it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think the flaws and the frustrations are somewhat obvious and built in. Certainly they are in these articles, the vitriol towards these celebrity published picture books. And I think what often gets overlooked is some of the positives, some of the pluses. I mean, yes, my own boat was lifted by virtue of my mother's celebrity, and being able to write with her gave me a wonderful leg up and a wonderful opportunity. It was incumbent upon me, however, to make sure that I knew what I was doing, and I learned the ropes as quickly and as thoroughly as possible so as not to fail epically and not to have really epic public big focus egg on our faces. That is the risk, is you may get a fast track in, but you also get much more exposure if you fail. And so I took it upon myself to go back to school, and I got a master's in creative writing. And even though I had a background in drama and theater and teaching playwriting to kids and in dramaturgy, I felt it was important to have a creative writing degree under my belt as well. And now I teach as a function of that. I think I may have worked harder than many people do just to overcome the perhaps speculation that I may have just had it easy and ridden in on my mother's coattails. I think what many people don't realize is in the case where it works, in the case where, yes, it's frustrating that a celebrity gets a fast track to publication or extra publicity and promotion, but there are two things to keep in mind about that. And one is, if you are an actor, let's say, you are a storyteller. If you are in film, if you are in television, if you are in theater, even if you are a lyricist, a songwriter, you are a storyteller. And you can't really say, oh, this person doesn't know anything about telling stories and got a free ticket, because everything goes back to dramatic action and dramatic storytelling. Whether you're writing a picture book, whether you're writing a play, whether you are writing a song, you're dealing with storytelling. You're dealing with the basics of Aristotle's poetics, if you will. And you know something coming in. I know that my background in theater, and particularly in working with plays and dramaturgy, greatly informed my picture book writing. I think in terms of three-act structure. I think in terms of action. I think in terms of the visual of a scene from my background in film and television and theater as well. And picture books are a visual medium. We are telling stories not just with our text, but with the illustrations. And there is a direct correlation between that medium and film and television and theater. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Many of these people are not starting from zero. They're starting with a fairly comprehensive understanding of dramatic structure. And another thing to consider and to keep in mind is that when these books sell, if these books sell well, it becomes a rising tide that floats all boats. If a publisher has a success with a celebrity picture book, that's money in their coffers that they can then allocate to other books, riskier books, right? So, like any business, publishing, there are risks, and most books, sadly, don't earn out their advances and their costs of coming to publication. Very few do. So the publisher needs a few sort of aces in the hand, so to speak, in order to offset some of the risks that they may be taking in other areas. And so I think that's something to keep in mind as well. If a celebrity picture book, maybe it's not the best picture book you've ever read in terms of its quality because it was, it bypassed a certain process of learning or quality control. But if it sells well, that's helping everybody. That's helping publishers, that's helping other authors because that publisher is more likely to take a risk now because they have the means to do so. So those are a couple of things that I think sometimes people forget when they get upset with celebrity publishing. And
I want to ask you in that very moment that you were saying that, but do you think that people get upset about the celebrities getting published, or do you think they get upset about the celebrities getting published with bad stories and no editing? And we don't know, did the celebrity say, no, I nobody corrects this? And there's people
I
who
think it's
think,
both,
and also saying it's easy. That's
I think it's both. I mean, certainly, that I'm thinking specifically about these two Guardian stories. One of them is fairly balanced in that it says these are the pros and these are the cons. These are the challenges. It highlights in particular celebrities who hire ghostwriters, let's say. I mean that, anybody who hires a ghostwriter, to me, whether you're a celebrity or not, that is a little bit cheating. Uh, of course, but celebrities are not by no means the only. I have an independent editing practice, and I cannot tell you how many times I see people hire ghostwriters to write because they have an idea, but they don't know how to write. So that's not unique to celebrities. The other article in The Guardian, the more recent article, is much more across the boards dismissive of even the effort of a celebrity to publish. It's just angry, and it seems sort of small in its anger. It's kind of like, well, you got to cut the line and that's not fair. And it doesn't really give any consideration to the work that that individual might have put in, to the context with which that book might have been developed or originated, and also to the degree to which it might be a choice on the publisher's part to reinforce their foundation so as to be able to take more chances with unknown books or riskier books, so to speak. And now I'm going to open it up to the floor. That's my soapbox for.
Okay. So I had to really consider my reactions as you were speaking, right? Because there were some things that I felt pretty viscerally as you were speaking. And I'm like, I wonder what's behind that. Because that's what I agree with you that second Guardian article was almost, to me, it felt like it wasn't even really journalism. It was just a whole bunch of people
venting.
Ranting.
And of course, we have way more of an inside view into the process that you've been through, but it's different because they're, in my humble opinion, you and your mother have talent, and I don't see any less time and effort that you're putting into your work that we're putting into ours,
Right.
and you get rejected.
Mhm.
And
I was gonna say,
I
yeah.
feel like people need to know that even though you are a quote unquote celebrity author or attached to one, that you're still going through the line. And it may be easier and you may get read faster, and when your books get published, you get to be on the Today Show and whatever, and most of us don't. But you're putting the work in. That to me is very different than, and I don't know if we're going to be naming names here or not, but like just your
I will.
random celebrity. Well, okay, so one of my biggest pet peeves with the celebrity books is, and I think this is felt very deeply for anybody who has worked hard to publish a picture book, because they are probably one of the most difficult things to write and to do well and to get published.
Yeah, if you're only gonna have 32 pages, you got to pick the right
But
word.
at the same time, the outside world looks at them as like a lesser than. And
Right.
we struggle to get paid, we struggle to get published, and all of this. And so when the celebrities swoop in, like, are these people going to come after me? Like Matthew McConaughey writes a book and it's an instant New York Times bestseller, and it's not good. It just isn't good. And I feel like at a minimum, the publishers could edit them. They know what good rhyme is versus bad rhyme. And the part that gets missed in all of this, in the discussions of the money and publishers being willing to take, to me, that sounds like trickle down economics. And I would love to see proof that
Yeah, good luck with that.
McConaughey's New York Times best-selling book led them to take risks on books from other voices. I would love to see proof of that direct connection. That because I talked to my publicist at Little Bee Books when I was at ALA this year, and the keynote speaker for ALA was Trevor Noah, who had just written a book which I refuse to read because I love Trevor Noah and I don't want to be mad at him. So, and to your point, Emma, he's a great writer. I
Yeah.
mean, Born a
Yeah,
Crime
he is a writer. Yeah.
he is a
Writer.
writer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he knows how to write a children's book. And it's that kind of audacity that really kind of gets into my craw a bit. Now, his book could be great. I don't know. I refuse to read it. But
What is the difference? Let me just ask you, Julie, what is the difference between Trevor Noah being a debut picture book author and somebody else who just has an idea for a picture book, let's say, but is a doctor or landscaper or a builder and sits down and writes a debut picture book without putting in all the years of learning and all of that?
the builder and the doctor, the builder or the doctor or whatever, they're not going to get
No, I'm
published.
saying, let's say they got published. Let's say they got lucky and they got published. We just don't hear that that's just a debut picture book author. We don't hear that person cut the line.
Well, that's because
You know,
the
we only
celebrity has
accept
a
it
light
because it's
shining on it.
celebrity.
Yeah.
Celebrity gets, I mean, okay, the name that makes me insane is Savannah Guthrie.
Oh,
Yes.
When she wrote her picture book with air quotes, she got up and she actually had the nerve, the gall, and the insulting words to say, "It was so easy. I did it in like a week."
Right.
I mean,
Through text. I was texting with my friend. We texted back and forth. I texted one sentence, she texted the next, and it was done in like a week. And I think that's what gets people, right?
That's
Is
it.
that it's
That's it.
if like Emma, if you were interviewed in like this discussion, and you talked about, oh, we worked on Waiting in the Wings for years. We had this story and we couldn't make it work, and then we finally did this and we did that. And you could really talk about the craft of writing that picture book and how much
Right.
work you put into it. And if some of these celebrities, when they were on the Today Show or Good Morning America or Jimmy Fallon Tonight or whatever, if they had the decency to say, this was really hard. Like I've heard I think it was Jason Reynolds I heard interviewed about The Party for Langston, right? And he's written a ton of books. He's a wonderful writer. And I heard him interviewed for it, and he was like, this was tough. Like, you only have so many words and you really got to make them count. This was probably the toughest project I've ever worked on. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's at least giving props to
Right.
what an art this is. And I think what drives authors crazy is when a celebrity gets up there and talks about how easy it is, and how, oh, I just came up with this idea and I wrote it in an afternoon, and then I talked to
And
my
not only that, Kelly,
agent
they're
and then
saying
it
it
got
on
published.
right. They're saying it on
It
national.
diminishes everybody else's work. And I think that's what people have a hard time with.
And they're saying it
what
while
happens then
getting all
is
that publicity.
you throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You assume that because Savannah Guthrie has made the mistake of saying this was so easy and has kind of diminished the value by extension of picture books and of the work that goes into it and the quality and all of that, then it becomes all celebrity. I mean, the title of this Guardian interview is "Celebrities Need to Stop Writing Children's Books. They're woefully underqualified." Like, it's talk about a generalization,
No, and I don't agree with it as a generalization for sure. I mean, obviously, as with most things, there's a spectrum, right? And I
Right.
think, you and your mom have clearly worked on your craft of writing. I enjoy, I don't know if we'll agree on this, but I've always enjoyed Jamie Lee Curtis's books. I think they're
Yes,
lovely and
she has
thoughtful,
talent.
and she
Yeah.
has that kid-like voice. It just sounds like a
Well, it's
4-year-old or a
also commitment to
6-year-old.
more than one book.
Exactly. Yeah, she has a whole series. And I know these are middle grade, but like Chris Colfer, who was on Glee, has a whole series of books, as does Evangeline Lilly. And like you said, they're creative storytellers, and they're using this as another way, but they're actually working on those things as writers,
Right.
And I think, but then
John
you have the other end
Lithgow
of the
too.
spectrum.
I love John Lithgow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
loved
exactly.
reading I'm a Manatee to my kids when they were little. And I
Yeah.
can tell, I'm a manatee.
Yeah.
I want people to realize that it is a spectrum. And it's not,
Right.
it's not always easy. I mean, my mother and I recently, within the last 5 years, had a book that was under contract rejected by the publisher who had already paid us in advance for that book. And we had to
Right.
then go out on submission with that book again. And
But why did they do that after they already paid you?
because once we turned in the book, they didn't like it.
Oh.
And so they were like, yeah, no, this is not what we're looking for. Can you write something else? And that was a blow. They had already paid us in advance for that book, So I'm just saying, we assume that celebrities get a free ride and it's really easy, and it isn't
It's not that
necessarily
they're getting a free ride. It's that, yes, the dismissal of how difficult this is, that this is a craft and people spend decades honing their craft. But it's also just that so many of these celebrity books, A, are one-offs, B, are really badly written. And that's what's so aggravating. And they're showing this to children. Children are reading these, and they're being influenced by these terribly written books and terrible stories.
But to me, the fault there lies with the editor, not with the celebrity.
If there's an editor, if the
there
editor
has to be an
wants
editor.
to
If
the
it's being
celebrity,
traditionally published, there's an editor.
yes,
Okay.
but is that editor standing up to the celebrity?
No, they're not. And
Right.
this is where I had a conversation at ALA with my publicist about celebrity books, because even though my latest book, Song After Song, musical, Julie Andrews, as long as we're, came out with Little B, which is a medium publisher, certainly not one of the big five, but the publicist there came from Simon and Schuster. And so he has a whole background of
Oh,
working in PR. And I asked him about celebrity picture books and how they happen and all of this. And what's interesting, he said that it is not a given that those books make the publisher a lot of money. And in fact,
Meghan
sometimes,
Markle's book tanked,
right, sometimes they actually lose a lot of money.
Mhm.
And oftentimes the books are not really edited at all because it's like the celebrity's agent or somebody pitches to them and says, hey, the children's market is hot right now. You should write a book. And then they do, and it's in their contract essentially that it has to be done by X. And so there is in some cases not a whole lot of vetting that's going on of the books. And so the publishers absolutely know that they're putting out, in some cases, not all, subpar work, unless the celebrity author themselves care about the quality of that book relative to books being published by the best of their peers in the picture book industry. And I would argue very few of them do. And the other thing that
It's
irritates
interesting though, because I mean, we've been published by 4 different major houses, and we've had really strict, stringent editors at all 4 houses, like
yeah, what's the
really
deal?
strong.
Like how can it be so different for you? Is it because some of the celebrities that are publishing now are just more in the zeitgeist, right? Like Trevor
Or
Noah,
they're just more, they
and
have more.
you know, like and so maybe more of a recognizable name across more people who are buying picture books today than Julie Andrews. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
I mean, I will tell you that another one of the challenges that we encountered, and I'm not, please don't misunderstand, I'm not like trying to make you feel sorry for celebrity authors, but I'm just saying that in my experience, it's not always the free. Yes, of course, there's the Today Show, and that makes a huge difference based on the name. But of the 35 children's books that we've written now over the last almost 30 years, I would say 5 have earned out. So you're right. To your point, it's not a guarantee that the picture book will make the publishing house money, but it probably is a better bet than on their P&L. They can put a few of those in than just a whole host of unknowns. But I will say that when we first came to one of our publishers, there was an assumption that we came with a PR machine because of the celebrity status. And therefore, the publisher did not lift a finger to promote the book. It was entirely incumbent upon us to get those Today Show bookings, to do the promotion, to get the word out. And as a result, I mean, we learned this the hard way. As a result, the first couple of books that we published there did nothing, didn't even begin to earn out. And we learned very quickly and very much the hard way that we were going to have to really work hard. And if, my mother doesn't have a publicist. We don't have a publicist. So it was up to us, to really educate ourselves and get up to speed and figure out how we were going to try to promote these books in a creative way. So there is that piece as well. I think sometimes what happens is the publishers think, oh, this book will sell itself.
right.
And then we can allocate those resources to a book that needs it more.
I just want to say to people who are listening, if you don't know what earns out means, it's when you sign a contract, you get an advance against sale. So say you get $1,000 or $100,000, whatever the amount is, your book then has to sell 1 penny more in order to get the payment, which means you've got that $1, and once it sells $1.01 in profit, you get
A percentage, 10% of that 1 cent.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me just say another phrase that I hate to say, but I do. Nobody gets into children's books because they want to get rich. They
For
get into
sure.
it because they have passion and they love sharing their stories with children and hope that they make a dent in their lives. And it's an amazing thing when somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh my God, I always loved your book. I love your book. I love your book. I read it to my kid every night." And it's another thing when a 20-year-old says, "Oh, when I was little, I loved your books." Then you know you're old.
Successful,
Well,
a
Yeah.
long-term writer.
I'm sure that this is not universal either, but one of the arguments that gets made in favor of celebrity books is that it can be a really big boon to illustrators who,
Oh yeah,
uh,
it is true.
Yeah.
but that highly depends. Now, I'm sure Christian Robinson, having won Caldecott's and whatever, had whatever deal he had for illustrating Meghan Markle's book. But if you're a newer illustrator and lesser known, it doesn't work that way. I have
Mhm.
a couple of friends who have illustrated celebrity picture books, and it's basically work for hire. And so
Because they think you're going to get paid, and yeah.
they, right, like it's basically paying that illustrator in quote unquote exposure rather
Right.
than,
Wow.
and in some cases, if they're looking to possibly make this book into a series, in one case, there were a lot of parameters around what the illustrator, this person, I'm not going to name names of who the illustrator was, had very specific parameters around using any kind of material that was similar to that book in the future. So not only was it a work for hire, meaning they get paid a single fee, and then if the book is a New York
Flat
Times
fee.
bestseller, you don't get to take advantage of that. But
Wow.
also, if you paint a pig for this book or a car, you can never use that particular style. It has to be different enough. So the illustrator has to be very careful because, I mean, they have
Right.
skills just like we do. And so they have to be very careful not to illustrate themselves out of opportunities in the future because let's say, for example, it's a pig book. Well, I mean, pigs are pretty common characters in children's,
Right.
and so now you got to think about how am I going to draw this pig in a way that I can still have pigs in the future but that won't look like these pigs so that I'm not in violation of my contract. So anyway, we're getting really into the weeds here, but I think some of the arguments the pat arguments that people make about,
Right.
well, it'd be great for illustrators and it brings money into the publishers and some of that may be true some of the time, but like anything in this industry, it's not true all of the time. And quite frankly, it's not even true, Emma, you and your mom are proof. It's not even true across the celebrity experience itself.
I think what it boils down to is the proof is in the pudding, as they say. Like judge the book, not the cover,
Right.
not the author.
I get just as mad at badly written books by anyone, but more so
there are
by
plenty of badly
celebrity
written children's books by unknown writers as well. It's just that the celebrity ones get more attention. It's interesting because I saw Wicked last night and I went with my daughter and we had a great time. And because I am the age that I am, I pretty much only know Ariana Grande as a pop star. And I was pleasantly surprised by how good she was as an actress in the film. I thought, wow, she's really got some humor chops and things like that. Now it turns out
she's so funny.
She's so good. And now it turns out she was a child actress and she was on a bunch of Nickelodeon shows or whatever. And I don't know what kind of training she had, but I was like, how is this different? Why is nobody upset that that a pop star gets cast in the movies, but they're upset when a celebrity from another medium attempts to write a book,
Because it's all entertainment, Emma. She was a child star. She's all over TikTok and she does these amazing, I guess it's mostly, is it on Jimmy Kimmel or what is it, Tonight Show, whatever. She does but she does these amazing imitations, mimicking of various female singers that are really funny, dead on. So that's all
But see,
entertaining, very funny.
I don't know that people see a big leap from pop star to singing in a movie musical. I mean, I know that there is,
I mean,
but
look
I'm
at Frank Sinatra. Not
singing.
new.
But if she was like, went from pop star to being the nun in Conclave this December about, you know, being the nun and serving the different bishops or whatever, the pope as they choose the next pope, people may have been like, really? You know, and she may have the chops to do that, but I bet there would have been a lot more complaining about that
Well,
particular genre.
that's an interesting point, because there was a moment at which Isabella Rossellini transitioned from model to actress,
Right, right.
A lot of
right?
them.
So
Yeah.
I mean, look at
Yeah.
Elvis. I mean, there's been a lot of pop stars who ended up being in the movies, and
would
it's just
like
not, it just doesn't mean you necessarily know how to act.
Of course
Right.
not.
I would like to think that the backlash would be, like you said, just go back to the basics. Is it a good book or not?
Yeah.
And I think if it is a good book, as in the case of You and Your Mom, and I agree, I loved the Jamie Lee Curtis books when my kids were little. And is the book good? And if it is, then great, because that's what we want. We want good books in the hands of children. And I think your example with Ariana Grande is perfect, because she was good in the role,
Right.
you know? And if you're following the stuff on TikTok and everything, you know, she really fought for that. There were a lot of auditions. There were a lot of people who had more acting and musical acting experience who auditioned and were in the, you know, so she did work hard. And I think that we can appreciate the fact that there's a story there about how from the time she was a little girl, she dreamed of being Glinda, and she worked and she worked and she worked. And then she was completely perfect, like to the point where you can almost not even imagine anybody else in that role.
Right.
If you apply that to a picture book, like I am 100,000% completely charmed by Waiting in the Wings every time I read it. You know, this is your latest book. And so what? At that point, you don't really care who wrote it. It's just a great book. That's what I think the standard that isn't being met sometimes is people who decide, I want to write a children's picture book, and this is why, and maybe they do have the passion for what they want to write about. I mean, nobody could say Meghan Markle wasn't passionate about her reason for writing her book. She made that very clear. But then to put all the time and effort and work and energy and study and go through the process like everybody else does so that you can produce a book that is worthy of the being read to our children, you know?
So, you know, all you
That's
celebrities
rereading.
listening out there who want to be authors, take our advice.
Yes.
Get a good editor, work on your craft.
Do the work.
Please don't come after us if we disparage your book, because you have way more money than we will ever have in our lives.
Remember what I said about getting into children's books.
And
Yeah.
here's
All right.
and for my next subject, for our next roundtable, I want us to discuss Nepo babies.
Yes.
As you might imagine, I have some things to say about that too.
All right. Well, I think to wrap up this conversation, and one little moral of the story is no matter who you are, if you are writing a picture book, you owe it to yourself and your audience to make it the best picture book it can be, to really work on your craft and be sure every word belongs there, and be open to editing and somebody else's critique, because in the end, we all just want to make wonderful picture books for children to read, enjoy, and learn from. So. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Of course, you can always find out more about the upcoming Picture Book Summit and any other activities that we're doing on our website at picturebooksummit.com. Be sure to head over there and see what our latest freebie is. So, all right. We'll see you guys all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Summit. Picture Book Summit. Picture Book Summit.